Hey guys, back with another Echoing Thoughts podcast here, episode number 40. 40. Crazy. Been doing this since the beginning of the year, 40 episodes in already. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the love. I'm really having a good time doing it. And for this episode, it's going to be a fun one. 1 week post September update. We have Damien clears. We got our first one. I shared that in my previous video. Another Asia team just cleared this morning. Before I recorded this, they had a hero at the top of the DPS charts, cranking. Excited for them. Congrats to them. They can't wait to see more teams clear, more content, and kind of in honor of that, and with a pre sort of 1,000 subscriber special, we're going to have a tiers list. We're going to do a tiers list later in this podcast, so can't wait to do that. Haven't done one in a while, it feels like, and I feel like since this max damage cap increase with the September update, with 40 mil cap kind of being the 41, 42 mil being the peak right now, it feels like the meta is changing once again. Classes are not able to hit the cap, especially with clone classes. The Asia team that had the world first clear, they had a DB at the top pre-September update, and now the DK was number one, kind of by a landslide, over almost 100 bill damage. And so interesting to see just how the top tier players are affected. And kind of the sad part about it as well, I mentioned it previously, was how it really only benefits the 1% of the 1%, right? People with full neck rolls, even level 40 only, got barely any increase in their cap, maybe like 100,000, while people with obviously the best gear in the game are up to 42, right? So it's kind of unfortunate to see, but it allows people to test the limits, test the potential of these classes, of their classes, and really kind of just now all it is pay to win even more. Right? Every class can compete. Every class can do, a lot of damage for the most part. But now it's just about gear. And if you have that level of gear, you're just going to keep increasing that gap. And as Damien pieces coming out with more people hitting Absolab and caps and getting those to level 60 with the weapon as well, it's just going to be, the game is going to be in a few months, like I said, but the end of the year is going to be completely different. The wide range of damage and gear is going to be exponential, to be honest. And I don't know if that's good for the game. I don't know if that's what people wanted. I'm sure a rebalance is going to come soon, but before the end of the year, Cygnus Knights remaster, that's going to come. But I'm just interested to see what the community is thinking, to be honest. Comment below what you think, if it benefits you, if you like it for the game in general. I'm sort of in between. But yeah, interesting to see what the current meta is. Obviously, people are going to be doing Lotus, the Damien clears, and doing more content. It's going to affect the economy, going to affect the game. But yeah, congrats to that one Damien team, the Asia team that cleared Damien with a hero. I think heroes, or you'll see in my DPS tiers list, I think they're going to be up there. I think at the peak, they are going to be up there. And then yeah, we'll see what else classes are going to really benefit the most. So we'll come back in a little bit, and I'll get up the tiers list, and we'll talk about what I think. All right, we're back, and we got the tiers list up, and this tiers list is going to be a little bit different. This is not going to be who's just the biggest, baddest DPS. This is going to be specifically around Damien and what I think are the tiers of classes that will, I guess, excel the best, have the best chance of making a team, that have great, utility, support, DPS, mobility. It's sort of in my opinion, the best of the best classes, right? And I think for Damien, it's a completely different animal than everything we've seen before. I've talked about it many, many times. And what makes it so challenging for our game is as a team, you need good players, but you also need certain classes. And I'll talk about that mainly around the fact that you cannot use fair trade. It's just not recommended right now for a lot of classes, just because of the way the Damien mechanics work and the way that orbs work and alter the main mechanics of the boss. If you use fair trade, you're just severely, handicapping yourself. Maybe you can do a little bit more DPS, but mechanics wise, it just makes it a lot harder to toggle on and off in order to help the team clear. You're going to be taking tick damage. You're not going to be able to clear altars with fair trade damage. And it's just not going to be a great time. I don't think any of the teams that cleared so far used fair trade. And so that, again, goes back to what, unfortunately, the idea that classes with crit res matter. You need certain classes to excel, to have the best chance of passing, gear aside, right? Cap aside. So it's going to be a little different. We're going to kind of have that in mind, where mobility is huge. Like classes like Buccaneers with their extremely fast dashes, even like Explorer Warriors, Sias, teleports, and things like that, Shades with their backstep, all have an advantage in my opinion because of the fact that they can cross the map faster than certain other classes that just have double jump. Ranged classes will benefit more because they can attack from farther away. Certain classes will just do better than others. And so we'll go through it kind of as a one by one, and I'm just going to go through it alphabetically. And so right here, we got Angelic Buster. Oof, starting off strong. What I know about Angelic Buster is that they are, DPS wise, they're not great, right? Utility wise, they have a Heaven's Door that, obviously if you have a bishop, it's not going to matter, but they have some support there. But it just feels like their dash, their mobility is really good. They don't have self heals. They do have one, maybe a few iframes that they could use to avoid certain skills. But the main mechanic, I think, that makes it challenging for Angelic Busters to be very viable is, one, they don't have good DPS, and two is just that they're not so self-sustainable, right? Like they don't have great iframes, they don't have self heals, and so that makes it very challenging. They rely on other classes to help them out, right? You need a bishop to heal. You need like a Sia's V3. You need other people to keep you alive, right? If you're getting ticked by orbs, you're getting hit by certain things, then you can't do it yourself, and you're just going to suffer, and you're going to not have much utility or help to other people on the teams. You don't really have party buffs, so not good, not great. Lower end, C tier, being kind of generous there probably, but Aran's, let's go with C tier as well. Now, Aran's have good mobility. Their iframes are better. As far as I know, they don't have self heals. Maybe they do, but I think you have to attack while you have self heals, while you're self healing. So, well, damage wise, they're not great. I would feel like whether it's Damien or another boss, Aran's are probably C tier, maybe B tier in terms of DPS. But I think just utility wise, they're not anything special. No party buffs or anything like that as well. So it's really tough to have them any higher than that. I think battle mages have some support skills, right? They have final damage buffs. They have barriers that I think are going to be helpful. They have some support skills, but they're kind of the forgotten support class that is trying to have barriers and bubbles and things to help out the team, but they're just not very useful as far compared to other classes that have support skills. And even like a Pathfinder's bubble is better than a battle mage's, I'm pretty sure. And so I think that even if their damage is probably high C, low B tier, it's kind of hard to say that they have much utility or support compared to all these other classes, right? It doesn't mean it's not possible to have them on there, but it's just much more challenging if their DPS and gear isn't the top tier. And, actually their mobility is decent, right? Their teleports are pretty good. So maybe they could be bumped up if their mobility, they're able to control orbs better. But right now, C tier just feels right. And I forgot Arc with the A's. Damage wise, S tier, A tier with the combos. Their mobility is not great. They're not self-sustaining with heals. I'm sure their damage is really good. They'll be really strong, but they don't really have party buffs. The only reason I put them a little bit higher than those C tier classes is because their damage is much higher. Their potential is much higher. But I think as far as I understand, they are just they're not ideal, right? They're not S tier, A tier even. And so I'm interested to see if any arcs with top tier gear are able to, how they fare in Damien. I would love to be proven wrong about all these classes. But that's just sort of my initial takeaway, that arcs are good DPS wise, but maybe we'll have a harder time than others, since they don't really have a teleport. Their dashes their mobility isn't great. And, they don't even have iframes, I'm pretty sure. Not great iframe options either. Bishops, first S tier of the day. They can do no damage. Like you can see all the Asia teams that cleared, their bishops are mainly support, and that is just enough. It's crazy to think that bishops can do what? I think the Asia team that just cleared this past week, the bishop did 1% of the team's total damage and cleared. I think they're ranging around 5%. So they're really getting carried by DPS, but they're just S tier. And their main reason is why is because they have support in every which way. Even if their shell doesn't help with dives, doesn't have any utility, benediction is really for one skill. They have heal, which is crucial. Fountain, which is crucial. They have their crit res, which you're going to need, on top of their bishop buffs that they have, the final damage buffs, the obviously advanced blessing. Bishops are just the ultimate, you need to have it. Without it, it's extremely hard. Now, it's definitely doable, right? If you have a team comp that, I don't know, can make up the crit res somehow with a Sia with their party buff of crit rate. If you have, a certain amount of base crit rate in your team, crit attack, where you can make up that 17% loss of crit res. You can find party buffs other places through maybe phantoms. Maybe you have Dark Knights or Lumis with Evans with their class party buffs. You can sacrifice not having bishop buffs. Maybe you have, obviously decent nodes help a lot too, but those heals are so important. And if you don't have a lot of classes that are self-sustaining with self-heals that can survive on their own, you'll find out that iframes are nice, are huge in other aspect, but iframes are just not, enough in certain situations. And having bishops on-demand heals for the entire team, their fountain putting down, it's actually helping us currently in the current meta a ton. All the teams I've passed will tell you that bishops, their heals and their support, just being in the support role, is extremely vital. And I would like to see teams pass without a bishop, make it possible. I mean, obviously, the crit res can be found in other places. For example, the Zephyr's team, World First Clear, they didn't have a shade without that crit res, and they're still able to get crits. So there's ways around it, but bishop is a much harder to replace than arguably any other class. probably besides Paladin, Seal. We'll see. Blaster next. Ooh, Blaster is interesting. I think they're just like Blasters are kind of dead right now. I feel like their damage is underwhelming. Their mobility, they have no party buffs. They're sort of, I don't even know if they have great iframes. Their mobility is decent. It's sad to see how far Blasters have fallen, but I just don't see any viability in, that they bring besides damage, and their damage is sort of nerfed right now in the mobile version. So if they don't bring damage, they don't bring that burst, they don't bring much. Maybe I'm disrespecting them a little bit. They don't have self heals either, so they're not very self-sustaining. If they were to be on orb duty or an altar duty, but I'm curious to see, maybe there could be in the B tier, but I feel like right now Blasters they're just not very useful right now if they don't got the damage. Bowmasters. Now, I think Bowmasters are pretty good. Now, are they the best archers? I don't think so, but they are able to heal themselves, right? They might lose a little bit of damage, maybe a lot of damage, but they're able to at least be self-sustaining if they need to be while attacking. They have decent mobility, and they're ranged. So ranged classes will get a slight buff because of the fact that they can attack from, middle. They can not just attack from range, but they also can attack ranged while moving. So it allows them to obviously dodge mechanics, dodge the blue orbs, reposition, and attack from range and still do damage. That's actually, it's pretty vital just to keep uptime, right? Uptime is probably the most important thing is DPS wise. And when people are, unable to maximize, do 100% of the damage, then your DPS really suffers. So I do think Bowmasters are pretty good. I do think they do have enough, they have like a teleport and your mobility to be useful. They are slightly self-sustaining. Maybe the one downside is they don't have iframes, if I'm not mistaken. They're not, they don't have things like that, but I think they're okay. I think they are viable, and I definitely think that Bowmasters, there's a few good Bowmasters in Asia that can really perform well. Some good players too that do really well in Lotus back when they were posting content. So I'm excited to see Bowmasters shine, and maybe they're better than I think, but B tier feels about right to me. Now Buccaneer. Buccaneer is, I gotta put them in the B tier. I think they're okay. Now we have a Buccaneer in our team. It's nice to have them because they have speed infusion, more party buffs. They have time leap, which allows for Phantom to take res, just an extra res, right? Their support is nice. Their mobility is really good. Like I mentioned, their dash skills are long and reactive and quick. And so they can cross the map very easily to handle altars, to handle blue orbs for mechanics. And they have mini iframes here and there. Now their iframes aren't great. I do think that they suffer what a lot of classes do, just the non-S tier classes, really, that they don't have a self-heal. They don't have an on-demand heal. They don't have, they don't have like the mages even, ethereal form, I think it's called, the sort of iframe, not iframe, but the damage, the shield basically. They don't have great utility survivability wise, but their mobility makes it enough, and it allows them to move across the map back and forth and get uptime on the boss. Maybe it's because I think that we have a Buck on our team, so I'm a little biased. Maybe they're C tier, but I feel like they can handle their own compared to other classes. So we'll see what they, B tier doesn't mean they're like even top 20 classes options, but I think they're viable for sure. Blaze Wizards. Hard to say. Damage isn't great. Probably not to Explorer Remaster or Cygnus Knights Remaster. I think mages just have a harder time surviving in general. Their teleports are pretty nice, right? They can kind of move around the map pretty well, but they don't give great party buffs. I think they have one decent one, but for the most part, I think there's just better mages out there. to be honest. Sadly, I think that they don't bring much to the team utility wise, party buff wise. They're not very self-sustaining survivability wise. Mobility is okay, DPS is okay. C tier feels about right. Now we'll get into Cannoneer. Now there was a Cannoneer in World First Clear, so I think they're good. Right, I think one of the reasons they took them was one, their DPS is pretty good. They're ranged, right? They have a lot of burst, place down skills as well. They have monkey magic, so that's a nice party buff. Allows phantoms to take other skills, like for example, phantoms can take heal. They can take res, other stolen skills as options, because monkey magic is great for the HP as well as as far as the DPS percent stats. I think Cannoneers are pretty good. I think they deserve to be in the B tier. Their DPS is above average, I think. And so definitely in a good spot. I think Corsairs are probably in the same tier as them. Again, I mentioned before, Pirates have pretty good DPS. They have a lot of lines. They have a lot of passive lines that they could be doing damage even if they're not on top of the boss, not attacking the boss. A lot of place down skills. So yeah, I think they're good. I think Corsairs, if you're a Corsair main out there, do you have iframes? I don't think you guys have self heals. I think self being, I don't know if your mobility is great either. I don't think it is. So they may suffer a little bit. There obviously will be better options, but I think being in the B tier is right. I don't think they're on the C tier. I think their damage is better than most of those classes on the C tier, and they can bring a little bit more to the table than those C tier classes. Demon Avengers. Now, based on what I saw from KMSM, I saw some pretty good Demon Avengers out there. Now, I don't know if there's any good ones left that have the best gear in the game. I don't think there are. But I do think Demon Avengers are good. They would do really well in Damien. They have a wide range in their attack. They have their nether shields that can attack from range. They're very self-sustainable. They have a damage reduction, so they're very tanky. They have self-heals. And they will do really, really well in the Damien format. They can fly. They can use their blink. They have their dash is very reactive. It's one of the better dashes in the game. And I just feel like they are underrated. I think I could even put them. I would be maybe maybe a hot take, but I really want to put them in the A tier. I think they're good. I think that you don't have to worry about them dying really, and attack, like as long as they're attacking within range, everything's not going to hit as hard. They're going to be able to move around and be mobile. I think they're good. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they're A tier. If other people have them in the A tier, I think I'm gonna do it. I like Demon Avengers. I think they're underrated for Damien. Now their damage, I think they're one of those classes that benefits a lot from having higher caps. So obviously, you need to have the best gear to put out damage because they cap so easily. But I think that if you were to have a Demon Avenger, they honestly might be the best aggro in the game if they can keep aggro. If they have the best gear on your team, them and DKs, maybe Paladins, maybe the best aggro tanks that can just tank everything, survive, dashes in the game. I won't put them in the A tier. I think they deserve it. I think that might be a little far-fetched, but I believe it. I believe it. Dual Blades. Dual Blades fell off a bit. Now, I'm not going to overreact. I think, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Dual Blades are one of those classes that kind of didn't get as much of a buff with this max damage cap patch as other classes did, but I still think they're good. I'm not going to dismiss the fact that they were the top DPS in the world's first clear, that they are, still one of the best DPS classes in the game. They have great mobility, great survivability. They don't have the self heals, obviously, but I think they're just one of the best thieves in the game. And so, just based off of that, I have to put them in the A tier. Their damage, their burst, their things like that is still A tier, my opinion. I got DK's S tier. DK's. Now, there's a little bit of data to back this up. Top DPS currently is a DK. Has the best gear, one of the best gears, but DK is one of those classes benefit a lot from the cap. Got a ton of lines. Their V3 is really strong. They have self-heals. They have iframes. They're very tanky. Arguably the best aggro in the game. Great dashes, great mobility. They got up jumps. They got dashes. They can move around. They have hyper body. They have party buff, the physical damage party buff as well. Forget what it's called. I think it's something to do with evil eye. But they are good. DKs are good. DKs are really good. I mean, enough said. I think that in a long fight as well, that sustaining damage type of class really shines. They make up a lot of ground in a longer 9+ minute fight, and that's something that I've kind of failed to mention until now. But burst classes have a really hard time of, if one thing goes wrong during their burst window, they really suffer and drop off in DPS. While, mechanics and things like that, DK classes that do consistent damage can sort of overcome them easier than burst tier classes. So DKs, S tier, really, really good. Demon Slayers. I mean, if their Demon Avengers are up there, I think Demon Slayers are up there too. They have one of the sneaky buffs, party buffs that Demon Slayers have that a lot of people don't know about is they have a buff that heals 25% everybody every 5 seconds. So if you're attacking, you're going to get a 25% heal every 5 seconds, which is massive, right? It's not instant. You have to attack, but the cooldown is 5 seconds, and that helps a ton. That helped a lot in Arc. That helps a lot in maybe not so much Lotus, but in Damien, it definitely will. All those, if you're able to have that on your team where everyone benefits from that, like imagine all these classes, imagine an Arc with 25% heals every 5 seconds. How much damage, how much more benefit they would get from that. Some classes just benefit more from these type of buffs, like a Dual Blade. If a Dual Blade had 25% heal every 5 seconds, geez, I mean, they'll be incredible, right? And so if everyone got that on the party, they would, it would increase your chances of passing exponentially, in my opinion. And that's something that Demon Slayers people don't really know about, but that party buff is huge. And Demon Slayer's damage isn't all that bad. Now, there's a little bit of skill cap. You have to know how to time your Mastema. You have to know how to time your, I think the snake is called Mastema. No, it's not Mastema, but your snake skill. But a lot of their lines are passive. Their V3s feed off of attacking, just being in range. So they're kind of like shades in that way where there's kind of less room for error because all the lines are passive. They just get, stacked on top of each other without even thinking. It's not more buttons. And they also have a heal skill on a 15-second cooldown that they can use on top of their own heals, which is sort of a mini iframe as well. On top of dark meta, which is another iframe, they can fly up. Their mobility, their dashes aren't great, but I think Demon Slayers are good. I can't wait to see how Rubido does in Damien. Maybe it feels like they're just subpar. They're lacking. They're worse than other warriors. Probably are, because warriors are really strong. You'll see a lot of the warriors are going to be above Demon Slayers. But I think that for Damien specifically, they will perform better, I think. And I think their utility for the team is actually very, very underrated and super useful. Now, Dawn Warriors. I'm going to put Dawn Warriors in C tier. I just don't think that they do much as far as for the party, right? They don't have party buffs. They don't have self-heals. Do they even have an iframe? A lackluster iframe, if anything, if at all. Their damage, they're one of those classes that don't benefit from the cap increase because they have so many lines. Well, their lines are smaller and they have clones, and it just feels like they are falling behind the current meta. Falling behind. They had their time, but now they're just kind of stuck in the mud, obviously, until Cygnus Knights Remaster, when everything may change. But I just feel like right now they're on the same tiers as Aran's, and probably arguably a step below them. Evans. I could easily put Evan as S tier. Their party buff is still one of the best in the game. They have great survivability, obviously teleports. They can handle any sort of situation. Their damage is insane, consistent. They have the burst. Evans are good. I mean, nothing about it. I really think that mages with teleports have a slight advantage. Also, that they're ranged. That's another advantage that they have. But I just feel like Evans are the cream of the crop for mages. There's other ones that are better, but I think that Evans are good. Really, really solid. A tier for sure. Fire poison mages. I'm curious about this one. I hope there's fire poison mages that show out. But I've heard in KMSM that they perform really well because of their dot damage, right? They can be doing damage while they're not even on top of the boss. While they're doing mechanics, they'll still be having uptime and things like that. And when things kind of get into a pinch, things get difficult, fire poison mages can still maintain and upkeep a sort of certain level of DPS. So I'm curious to see how they play out. The thing about Explorer mages, fire poison mages, they don't have any survivability, just none. Ethereal is nice. No, Magic Guard is nice too, but like that's one of those things that you kind of have to play around with, because if you're using Mana Overload to do more damage, you can't use Magic Guard, right? Our Bishop toyed around with it, just couldn't happen, just couldn't do it, and those ticks hurt. The damage hurts. Magic Guard may save you from getting one-shotted, but in the grand scheme of the long fights, it may be challenging. The reason I put them in the B tier above a Blaze Wizard is because I just think their damage is a little bit better. I think that, again, the dot damage is underrated for sure, and they're not bad. Heroes. Now, originally I would have had Hero in the A tier. Maybe they are A tier, but I had to put them in S tier because the team just cleared with the Hero as their top DPS, which means that they're good. Survivability, they're good. Their damage is insane. They're one of those classes, again, they cap really easily. So more cap. Cap is king. With the current cap meta, heroes are very, very strong. And I mean, if you played PC Maple, heroes are bossing machines, right? So it's no surprise that heroes are doing really well. All Explorer Warriors are very strong. And so heroes, without a doubt, they even have crit res as well. So that's another underrated factor. Yeah, heroes are nice. Heroes are, if I were to choose a hero over a DK, that's a tough one. For sure, I would prefer Hero. I think Hero has higher potential damage-wise, peak. And if you're giving your hero Synchro from a Paladin, if they're your top DPS, they're going to benefit way more than a Dark Knight is. And with their iframe, their short scale iframes and things like that, I think that heroes have the more potential than a DK to surpass their tiers as damage wise. DK is a little bit more tanky with their iframes, but I think heroes are bossing machines. Ice Lightning Mage. I gotta put them right next to the Fire Poison Mage. I don't think they're better or worse. They're just the same. Yeah. Ice Lightning Mages, I mean, with the new cap, it might be huge. It might be nice. For sure. They've kind of just fallen middle of the pack. B tier, they're a good mage, not great. Meditation is a nice party buff, but other than that, they're B tier. Right? I don't think they're on the level as Evans. Now, when we did run with Truffleox, he was putting out a lot of damage. He has insane gear. I'm excited to see when he runs and he starts to put content out he may prove me wrong. They may be A tier. I think that their damage is better than some people think, than maybe I think. But of course, you acquire a ton of gear, and they're just not very tanky. I just don't like that. Like if you're, and then they take aggro away sometimes with their burst, and I don't really like that. But yeah, I mean, their burst is good. Their damage is pretty solid. They're just not very tanky, and yeah, not bad. Kaisers is an interesting one. I'm gonna put them at B tier. Now I'm being picky with. I think there's a case for them to be A tier. I just don't think their damage is there. They don't have self heals, which is tough, but they are tanky. When you want to put into but also they have a class party buff, Grand Absorption, I think, which is a nice defensive skill. I think it reduces damage of everything, so that might be enough reason to put them in the A tier. But their damage is just a tier below Demon Slayers, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit better than Demon Avengers. Their mobility is good, right? They have their blinks, their teleports. They have, their swords are nice, so they can kind of attack passively. They have clones. They have good burst damage. I think Kaisers are solid for sure. I could see Kaisers having great utility and great purpose in a Damien clear. Have every right to be in a Damien team, for sure. And they're good. I like them. Kinesis, sadly, don't really know too much about them, to be honest. Still haven't seen a great one post much content. Feel like they have potential for sure. I think that they do well with more cap, but as far as survivability, not great. Their attacks are a little bit slower as well, so it kind of just allows less room to react to skills and movements and things like that. Until I see Kinesis prove me otherwise, I don't think that they are worthy of being on the same tier as like Ice Lightning Mage and a Fire Poison Mage in those mage tiers. So I just put them a tier below, kind of in that Blaze Wizard level Battle Mage as well. Lumi. S tier. Most lines for a mage in the game. One of the top 5, I think, lines. They have no clone lines, so every line is gonna cap. So more cap. Lumis are gonna be insane. I think when Breeze clears, you'll see that he is gonna be topping the charts by quite a bit. I assume he'll be aggro. Lumis are always great aggros. Lumis have great survivability. They have great mobility as well. They have their class buff, that meditation, similar to meditation for explorer mages. But their damage is just S tier. It's a tier above Evans. It's the best in the game for mages. And even though there's not mobs to kill, their single target is plenty enough. And I believe that they are one of the best classes in the game, DPS wise. And if you have a Lumi on your team, you are going to be pretty happy, especially a well-geared one that knows how to play their class. Yeah, they're going to show out and really pump out really insane damage. Mechanics. I think mechanics are B tier. Now, I noticed I haven't been putting D tiers in here, maybe being a little generous just because there's not enough data. Maybe I'll just take out the D tier altogether. But I think mechanics are pretty solid. Like, they can attack on the move. They have final damage buffs for the party. Their survivability may not be great, but I think their mobility is good because they can attack on the move. They can avoid stuff while still doing damage. I think the pirate classes are pretty well represented. May not be the top of the top, but B tier is nothing to be ashamed of. Like, I think that right now, you could arguably say they're in the top 15, top 10 right now. Yeah. Well, when more classes come out, they'll probably drop out of the top 10, but I can definitely see mechanics being not holding the team back DPS wise. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of what I see as B tier. Like their damage isn't poor enough where they're, you're gonna have to carry them DPS wise, even if their gear is good. I think all the B tier classes, if they do, if they have good gear and they have good mechanics, they can easily be, fight for first page damage and, hold their own. So that's kind of what I see in the B tier. Mercedes, obviously, arguably the top DPS in the game, DPS class in the game. You give them Echo, you give them Synchro. They have an iframe. They can attack on the move. They're ranged. They have good mobility. I mean, if you have a Mercedes with good class party buffs, they will be able to pump out insane amounts of damage, and they're going to take aggro away when their burst is up. So it's nice to have a Mercedes sort of know what they're doing with good gear. We got the best one in the game, so that's without a doubt why I have them in the S tier. We've seen it. We'll see it later on when we run some more, hopefully clear the second time. But yeah, I don't think anyone's arguing that Mercedes are S tier. Damage wise, their burst is second to none, to be honest. And even if they don't really benefit much from the cap increases, it doesn't even matter. They're that strong. Marksman, I'll put them in the C tier. Now I think Bowmasters are definitely better because they can attack on the move. Marksmen don't have great survivability. They have the teleports here and there. They don't have any utility, support skills, things like that can help the team. Party buffs, usually they don't have great HP. I think they don't have the heals like Bowmasters do as well as even an option. Yeah, they're sadly Marksmen just aren't. They're just a tier below. When you attack slow or when you can't attack on the move, even though you're ranged, you don't have great support. It's just tough to put them even viable. But I hope, hopefully there's some well-geared marksmen out there that can really show out. Night Lords. These are kind of a lot of these are big hitters coming up left. Say kind of the best for last. I think at their peak, if you have a great Night Lord, they are S tier. But like in Lotus and in Arc, at the end of the day, I think when people get more comfortable with Night Lords and the mechanics, I think Night Lords can be up there with the best DPS in the game. Now my issue is they have poor survivability, right? You're going to really need your self heals coming from other sources. Their iframes are on long cooldowns, longer compared to other classes. And so as an aggro, Night Lords really have to have the best gear in the game, maximum HP. But if they play it well, I think their DPS is arguably better than Dual Blades, without a doubt. Right? With Barrage, if you're able to pin the boss in the right corner, you can get your barrages, maximize your barrages. You can maximize your shuriken. You can just stand there and be a turret and do damage. And you are good enough of a player to, handle altars if that's your job, or handle blue orbs if that's your job. I think Night Lords can perform very, very well. I just don't see them in the B tier because even if they struggle mechanically, but they have the gear, I think Night Lords can perform very, very well and do slightly better than a lot of these classes in the B tier. So A tier with the potential to be S tier, but currently in the meta, with the lack of self heals and survivability, they are A tier. Now, Nightwalkers on the other hand, if you look a tier below, kind of all the same talking points as a Night Lord, but just without the damage. Their damage is just a tier below. It's just simple as that. They have a lot of clone lines, so even if we have a 40 mil cap Nightwalker, if they place their omen in the wrong place, if they get stuck with blue orbs, then they can't survive on their own. If they mismanage one thing, they lose a ton of damage, and it just feels like Nightwalkers are middle tier, right? If they don't bring DPS, they don't really bring a lot to the table. And unfortunately, that was kind of the case with our team. It was just hard to keep them one of our Nightwalkers on the team, even though he had good gear, right? He had better gear than some other people. It's just really tough for them to consistently do damage, and with the nature of the boss, and it was tough for them to handle altars and blue orbs and be self-sustainable, because iframes are nice, again, like I mentioned, but iframes aren't really as effective in Damien as it is in other bosses. But wait till remaster, they get those bat heal procs, and they'll be just fine. Nightwalkers will jump up probably the S tier in the near future. Paladins, no surprise here, S tier. Besides the support, besides Synchro, Echo, besides great mobility, great damage and burst, kind of the main thing that separates them from all these other warriors is that they have a on-demand, instant cast, no cooldown heal. Think about that. I think they're the only class in the game with an instant cast heal without a cooldown. Bishops don't have it. Seers don't have it. Other warriors don't have it. It's instant cast. The first cast heals for 50% of their health. And then every cast after that within a time period is 10% less. But 50% is all you need. On cue. On demand. Your power elixir is down. Use that skill. You're not going to die. Insane. Just the best skill for a DPS paladin, a support paladin. We're not even talking about crit res with noble demand. We're not even talking about single res heal. We're not even talking about their damage. Just the fact that they can on demand heal. They can tank orbs. They can stand on the altar better than any class in the game. Whether they're using their iframe or not. I mean, bishops have a cooldown on their heal skill. It's literally called heal, and it's not as good as the paladin's heal. Straight up. Crazy. I mean, even if you don't have a greatly geared paladin, it's kind of the same situation as like a bishop, but their damage is way better than a bishop, and so yeah, not much more to say. Paladins, S tier, need them. Pathfinders. Now I was watching some runs from Kinesis. Their Pathfinders were doing good DPS. They were topping the charts. Not sure how it is now. They obviously benefit a lot from the cap increase. They obviously benefit a lot. Their bubble, their V3 bubble, is a great utility skill. But other than that, they don't have much. I don't think they're going to handle orbs and altars very well. They're not going to be the greatest option. Their damage is pretty good though. I have to say, with their rebalances, now it's all relative, right? Pathfinder mains are going to be, they obviously need a buff, and they haven't been getting buffed in the past to their main skills in the past how many rebalances. Kind of sad. So definitely deserve to get more lines and more damage, but I don't think they're unplayable in Damien. I think they bring some utility, they bring some damage, they can definitely compete, they attack from range. So I got them. They're sufficient. You can hold your own. The B tier is sort of that you can clear Damien with a good Pathfinder on your team. They will bring utility, they will bring damage, and they can survive on their own better than most. Phantoms, no questions about it. S tier. And one of the things, kind of the benefits that we found from Phantoms, shout out to Sephir's class, his insight, or their team, they use heal. So bishops and phantoms use heal to keep the team alive during the end of Damien. It's nice. Huge. So they can take, we have two phantoms, both take heal. One takes monkey magic, one takes meditation, and then both take res, and we have a Buccaneer who takes time leap. Phantoms are insane. Gotta have one. Simple as that. Phantoms their DPS is good. They can attack on the move with melee. They can use ace in the hole. They can even, to attack passively. Synchro, Freud, Darksight, Magic Guard if they wanted. Just, not much to say. S tier. Very good. Even probably can top the charts. A great aggro class as well, especially if you're using heal. Yeah. The Phantoms, they can do it all. They can be just fully support and help the team clear. They can be top DPS, help the team clear, everything in between. Insane. Shades. Now, Shades are really good. Sadly underrepresented, especially in Asia. But we could arguably the best one in the game, and it shows out. His damage isn't his damage is good. I would say with the cap increases, Shades benefit a lot. He beat our Nightwalker with 5 mil less cap. Shades backsteps are insane. Really good, quick, instinct, reactive backsteps to get across the map. They have a lot of passive lines, so as long as they're attacking, they can do uptime. Their damage doesn't drop off. Again, consistent, sustained damage classes do really well in longer fights. On top of split, on top of their crit res, it's nice. On top of their stun, if you want to use it, they got utility. They got their DPS is okay, but their utility, their mobility, they even have on-demand heals as well, with as well as sort of consistent heals with their consistent leech with their while they're attacking. It's Shades are S tier, really strong. Now you don't gotta have it, right? But having one, a really good one, is hard to match. Shadowers. Now, in my opinion, now we have a really good Shadower. I feel like Shadowers are... I want to put them on the S tier because I know there's some really strong Shadowers, like in Pandemonium, Fuchu, that I feel like would perform really well once they clear Damien. I feel like their damage, they have high potential, especially if they had 40 mil cap, potentially. They could be really pumping out. They'd be a pretty solid aggro as well. They have good mobility. They have good survivability. They have Mesoguard. They don't have self-heals, but their survivability, in my opinion, is better than a lot of the other thieves besides Phantom. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and maybe I'm biased. They got 3% crit res. That helps. That adds up. And again, consistent damage dealing classes perform well in these long fights. Repeating myself. Do I think they're better than Dual Blades? I do, especially with the new cap. Do I think they're better than Night Lords in a long fight? Absolutely. I'm gonna put them in the S tier. This is a lot of S tier classes. I'm gonna have to rethink this one. No, I think there's a lot of really good classes. I think there really are. Like A tier it's tough to be an A tier. Like they're in there for different reasons. But S tier, there's a 3, 6, 9 really good classes. And the next class is gonna join them. Sia. Like we added a Sia to our rotation, to our team, and it exponentially changed the game for us. Like without even notice. I talked about it in my Damien video, my recap breakdown video. Not going to talk too much about it again, but their utility, their ability to kind of mold and change depending on what the team needs is second to none, really. I think it's better than a Bishop. They can do more damage, and if they can keep their V3 up, if you got a good Sia playing and knows how to micromanage that stuff between DPS and support, you can keep the team alive without even anyone batting an eye or even noticing, right? So, Sia S tier. Plus, they have 10% crit rate as a buff for the entire party. Like it's like crit res, so that's a great way to make up for not having one of these other classes. But yeah, Sia's can be podium DPS, could probably top DPS. or they could be, in between with great support, great survivability, just their party buff with their crit rate percent. It's Sia's top 5 class, arguably top 3 class in the game right now. What is this, Thunderbreaker? Yeah, hard for me to say. I'll just put them there. A tier below Buccaneers. They kind of give the same thing. Speed infusion, have good mobility. DPS for Buccaneers is probably a little better. Thunderbreakers don't have great iframes, great damage. A lot, just not, unfortunately, just not, there's better options out there. Probably one of the more underwhelming pirate classes overall, sadly. But, yeah, Thunderbreakers, C tier. I'm not going to put anyone in the D tier. I think Wind Archers are good. I keep saying their V3 barrier is really good. It's really good. For altars, for orbs, just survivability. You can use it for damage. It's on a short cooldown. You can have it for its uptime is really strong. It can help you survive a dash. They have a short iframe as well. If they want to use it, they can attack on the move. They have passive lines. They have range. Their wind walk is the best in one of the best mobility skills for Damien in the game. Arguably, probably the best. Honestly, they can get from one side of the map to the other in a split second and just hold aggro. They can fly up and hold aggro or hold orb aggro. They don't have self heals, but they have so much other utility. They have their shields and iframes that they can do to survive it, and they cap easily, right? So they're more cap, more damage. They'll benefit from that. And with Remaster coming up, they're due for even more damage. So excited for them. I think they're very strong. A tier for sure. And Wild Hunters. Now, I've heard a little bit about it from Zephyr, right? He played Wind Archer. He played Wild Hunter. He said Wild Hunters was a tier below, even with the crit res. Wind Archers are just better mainly because their V3 skill. They're tankier. Their mobility is better. But I think in the right format, a Wild Hunter can be just as impactful as a Wind Archer, right? And the reason for it is because of their crit res. Again, you can sub them in for not having a Shade, not having a Bishop or something, right? And you'll be able to cap more. You're trying to find ways to crit 100% of the time, and Wild Hunters have that utility. So they bring another dimension than the Wind Archer. You could flip-flop and say, like, if Zephyr says that Wind Archers are better, they're better, right? But it doesn't mean that Wild Hunters can't be on the same tier as them, in my opinion. And so I think Wild Hunters have their place. They have, turrets and place down skills that they can use to attack while they're not in position, the right position. They can attack on the move, avoid orbs. I think they're good. They have value for sure. And the last one is Xenon. Yeah, I'm not I just don't see what they can bring. C tier. They're nothing special, right? Their damage is kind of funky. The way they do damage is funky. Their mobility isn't great. They don't have the greatest iframes. Not much survivability, self heals. I just feel like they're just a tier below, like a Nightwalker. I can't put them on the same tier as a Nightwalker. So that's how I got them ranked. That's all the classes. Let's see. So recap. 3, 6, 9, 10 S tier classes. Wouldn't argue if you had Dual Blades up there. Wouldn't argue if you had Night Lords up there. Wouldn't argue if you have Evans up there. But I think the only class that maybe could drop down from the S tier is the Shadower. Flip-flop them with the Dual Blade, whatever it is. I'm curious what your thoughts are. And to be honest, this isn't much different than what a tiers list would be for any other content. For Lotus, for Arc, maybe a few flip-flops here and there. But for those classes that are trying to clear, for those people that are trying to clear bosses for the first time, I would say that this S tier of classes is the best classes to have in your team if you're just trying to clear for the first time, right? So my ideal team now for Damien, without having all of one class, that just doesn't make sense. That's not really viable. That's not going to happen. But if I were to make up a team, my top 10 would have to have the no questions about it is Sia, Bishop, Phantom, probably 2 Phantoms, Paladin. Sia, Bishop. Let's just put this in order right here. Sia, Bishop, Paladin, Phantom, Shade. Those 5 are the no-brainers, in my opinion. Right? You'll get the crit res, the 100% crit res with all these classes. Right? You'll get split. You'll have monkey magic. You'll have meditation. You'll have 2 res and a time leap from each phantom. So you have 2 phantoms. You'll have obviously you have Echo and Synchro. You have CSV3, their support and their damage, Bishops, heals, all their support, benediction, things like that. In my opinion, for my top 10, I would have these 5 classes and 2 phantoms. So 6, that's my top 6, and then the 4 interchangeable. If these were all the best geared in the game, I would have Mercedes for sure. I think a DK, because DKs will give hyper body and a DK will give their physical damage, magic damage buff as well. And I mean, interchangeable DK hero, right? I think the aggro would be a Mercedes, so that's 8. And I think a Lumi's good because they're tanky, they have great mobility with teleports, and they do good damage. So that'd be my 9th. And my 10th. I really like what a Demon Slayer can bring. That's a little offbeat, right? I'm curious what Rubido thinks or other Demon Slayers thinks, but I really like their support. I really like that 25% heal. Maybe it's not as great as I think, but just knowing how impactful, like having your phantoms use heal, how impactful your bishop was to use heal and fountain, and just having those extra heals in the current meta is nice. It's nice, but I could swap the Demon Slayer if you have enough support, enough HP. Actually, all those classes are pretty tanky anyway, so maybe we don't need those extra heals. Like a Shadower is good, a Dual Blade's good, a Wind Archer. I think all those classes, whoever could do the best damage. But yeah, those are my top 10. Bishop, Pally, Sia. 2 Phantoms, a Shade with 6, and then 7 would be DK, 8 would be Lumi, Mercedes would be 9, and then my 10th. I kind of want to take. Now I want to take an Evan because of their Evan buff. Yeah, I think I would be greedy and take an Evan buff as a Paladin. Right, get those lines up. Yeah, we'll take an Evan, another mobile teleport class that does good damage, party buffs, and we'll have a honorable mention, a substitute as a Demon Slayer for their heals. But yeah, love to hear you guys' thoughts. Damien, there's a lot going on, but man, there's a lot of good classes, a lot of S tier classes, but a lot of good A tier classes and B tiers that are definitely viable, that can hold their own, in my opinion. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. This is strictly for Damien, but kind of applies to a lot of other bosses as well. thank you for watching. I may do another tiers list next week for free-to-play players. I know I've been getting questions about that a lot. Which is the best kind of free-to-play class out there? And to be honest, I gave you a little, looking at it, I don't think it would change much, to be honest. I think the best classes are best no matter what, gear you have. Kind of early contender, Seal. Seal for mobbing, for leveling, survivability, support. Paladin, Phantom, Bishop. All great options. Those are my top 4 right off the bat, off the top of my head. But thank you for watching, guys. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below what you guys think. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you again. Appreciate all the support. Hopefully we'll clear Damien this next reset. And until then, I'll see you guys next time.